Hello everyone, Bones McGee here, part-time gamer, part-time thinker, and all-time skeleton. Fallout has been one of my favorite game franchises for as long as I can remember, and it's not only well known but critically praised for its unique and compelling world building. It's easily one of the strongest points the franchise has. Its retrofuturism is instantly recognizable, from Nuka-Cola to the many variations of power armor throughout the series, to the Mr. Handy and many other robots featured in the games, and more recently the television series. Many elements of the world often have pages of lore to explain their place and depth, which is awesome for holding player immersion. Whether it be a terminal entry or a handwritten note, nearly everything has an explanation for how it came to be, or at least a reason for its existence. However, there's one whole section of lore that's left mostly unexplained. The enigmatic and almost certainly malevolent Zetans, invaders from another world with technology rivaling anything humanity has achieved. The Fallout 3 expansion, Mothership Zeta, is the most we've been exposed to their technological achievements in robotics, genetic engineering, and their advances in weapons technology. Speaking of which, their weapons, while at least somewhat prevalent throughout the series, mostly through the iconic reoccurring appearances of the alien blaster, there isn't much lore to explain how these weapons function on a technical level. I love to speculate, so I decided to challenge myself to try and explain how these weapons function both on a technical level and their purpose in the Zetan military in a canonically friendly way. I'll mostly be focusing on weapons featured in Fallout 3 and by extension Mothership Zeta, as these are the most recent versions of these weapons in the Fallout timeline, but I'll do my best to explain a few of the odd ones out later on. In addition, I won't be featuring any Creation Club content, as the canonical implementation of those weapons is questionable at best. Without further ado, let's begin. Starting off right away with probably the easiest to explain of the bunch, is this alien weapon is grounded enough in reality that real versions exist. The shock baton is a weapon found fairly commonly throughout Mothership Zeta, carried by crew members of the mothership, on shelves, and in various storage units. Its purpose, as evidenced by the first time we see it, is to subdue unruly prisoners and test subjects, and to fend off boarders or other intruders in close quarters combat. It's quite an extreme example of a stun weapon, as unlike real-life stun batons, which, powered by a battery, use a voltage transformer to turn low-voltage current into a high-voltage burst, which is then delivered through electrodes at the press of a trigger, and these electrodes are usually located on the end of the rod, the alien shock baton seems to use a decently sized Tesla coil within a mace-like head to deliver both bludgeoning damage and a powerful shock. Not only that, but the coil remains actively shooting arcs of electricity for as long as the baton is extended. The distance these arcs shoot out of the coil varies somewhat, but can reach as long as about half of the Lone Wanderer's thumb, or about an inch, which would require about 75,000 volts of electricity to accomplish. But that's assuming the atmosphere on the ship is similar to that of Earth at sea level. Comparing this to the relatively low 30,000 volts of a typical human stun baton, or the 50,000 of a typical taser, this is a significantly stronger of an electrical jolt than any of the stun weapons we use. While it's difficult to determine the exact lethality from its voltage alone, as lethality of electricity is measured in amperes, we do know that it is in fact lethal, but not instantly. About 50 to 150 amps is enough for severe muscle reactions, respiratory arrest, and a risk of death, so it's safe to assume that the baton emits amps somewhere in that range, as going much higher than that would violate the weapon's purpose as a non-lethal subjugator. Overall, this weapon is grounded in reality, but is a shining example of Zetan ingenuity as well as brutality. Onwards to the next weapons. While you might be confused looking at a regular old plasma rifle in a video about high-tech alien weaponry, but the start of my speculation resides within humanity's invention of compact plasma weapons within the Fallout timeline, and the function of these weapons is crucial to my explanations later on. The origins of plasma weapons reside in tools rather than military prototypes, the industrial plasma caster from Fallout 76 being a stat example, being used as a cutting tool rather than a weapon, much like real-life plasma cutters. Arms-producing company Winchester, not to be confused with the real Winchester repeating arms, would later adapt this industrial design into the first plasma weapon, the Winchester P94, featured in both Fallout 1 and 2, as well as New Vegas. However, this design, while functional, was bulky and required specialized training to operate. This didn't change until Dr. Aldwin Morley developed the MPLX Nova Surge, created 14 years before the Great War, in secret for the Enclave. This prototype was developed through the reverse engineering of Zetan technology. It drained energy cells a bit too fast, and its coolant coils were extremely heavy, and these flaws resulted in the Nova Surge not being adopted in full, but its housing was approved for the final design of the common plasma pistol. The prototype was stolen before the bombs dropped by a group called Quaere Virum as proof of a conspiracy of the government cover-up of proof of extraterrestrial life and the usage of alien technology. The theft was assisted by Dr. Morley, but Morley betrayed Quaere Virum, utilizing the theft as a way to draw the group out. The group's remaining member, Reed Underwood, hid the prototype in a safe that could only be unlocked via his personal terminal, and buried both in the desert. The safe and terminal would eventually be recovered by the Zetans aboard Mothership Zeta, likely with the intent to study the prototype and understand humanity's capability of reverse engineering their technology. The Lone Wanderer can find this prototype still in its safe in Mothership Zeta's cargo hold. As for what the prototype proved to the Enclave, it led to the eventual development of both the plasma pistol and urban plasma rifle, a much more compact and easier to use weapon compared to the Winchester P94. How do human plasma weapons, specifically the compact versions, tie in with Zetan blaster weaponry? To understand this, we must look at the definition of what plasma is in this context. Plasma is a state of matter created when gas is energized to the point where electrons are stripped from atoms, forming a superheated, ionized version. Natural examples of plasma include stars, lightning, and the phenomenon known as the aurora borealis. Normally, plasma can't really be directed in the sense of a traditional weapon projectile, like bullets. It is, however, electrically conductive and responds to electromagnetic fields. This is how Fallout explains how its plasma weapons function on a technical level. The projectile is formed as a toroid, or donut-shaped object, in its chamber before being sent down a superconducting barrel and propelled, and in some cases stabilized, by an electromagnetic field. The electromagnetic field keeps the plasma stable under normal atmospheric conditions where it would otherwise fizzle out. How does this connect to the alien weapons? Well, remember earlier with the Nova Surge? It was the first prototype of a more compact form of plasma weaponry, as the Winchester P94 needed to have this big and bulky frame to house all the necessary components to make the weapon work. It is relatively safe to assume that because Zetan weapons were needed to reverse engineer and develop a more compact design, that Zetan weaponry is also plasma-based. Star Wars blasters, while from an entirely different fictional universe, function similarly on a visual level to Zetan weapons, or at least the alien blaster. Star Wars blasters utilize a replaceable gas cartridge and power pack to supercharge this gas into a plasma state, which is then propelled and shaped by an electromagnetic field, just like how plasma weapons in Fallout supposedly function. Fallout's plasma weapons utilize either fusion cells or gas cartridges depending on the game you're playing, but lore-wise utilize both. The reason the games don't make you use both is likely just for the sake of gameplay convenience, but concept art for Fallout 3's plasma rifle shows a hydrogen canister in place of where the fusion cell is in the final product. Long story short, Zetan blasters are plasma-based just like human plasma weapons, albeit a lot more advanced and likely utilizing a different gas. With this said, I believe that alien power cells and modules aren't batteries at all like their names suggest. The term power cell and power module are misnomers applied to these gas cartridges, as you play through Fallout from the perspective of a human who has no idea how these weapons work on a technical level, and assumes that they are batteries based on their shape. In general, these blasters likely have some onboard power source that lasts either almost indefinitely or long enough that the weapon can be used for years with proper maintenance until a replacement is necessary, most likely the latter. Even some official concept art supports this, with art of the alien blaster pistol from The Art of Fallout 4 referring to the blaster round as a ammo canister, not a battery. Now that we have established the theoretical knowledge that Zetan weapons are just more advanced plasma weapons, we can start explaining each blaster in both its purpose and technical functionality. Starting off strong, we have the humble alien atomizer, a common sidearm found aboard Mothership Zeta with a unique double-barrel design. This firearm likely serves as the standard firearm issued to crew members of the Zetan Navy, used to repel boarders, and for general self-defense. Its unique double-barrel design isn't just for show, as it technically fires from both, but only shoots a single, somewhat disc-shaped projectile. Looking at its design, I'm reminded of the AF-2011A1, a real firearm manufactured by Arsenal Firearms, which on a functional level is two M1911s taped together. The purpose of the AF-2011A1 was to increase the ballistic capacity of 45 ACP without needing to develop a larger caliber, and I believe that design philosophy carries over to the atomizer. Utilizing two barrels, it draws twice as much gas from its cartridge while uniting the two plasma projectiles under a single electromagnetic field, giving each trigger pull more bang for its buck. The cartridges this pistol utilizes are the more common power module as opposed to the significantly rarer power cell. Speaking of those, why are the power cells and power modules different? Why not every weapon use the same ammo? I have a theory for this as well, and I'd like to take a moment to explain it really fast. The explanation gameplay-wise is so the player doesn't gain an absolutely massive stockpile of ammo for a weapon like the Alien Blaster that's insanely powerful. The Alien Blaster is mostly an Easter egg weapon, designed to be used in moderation to get out of sticky situations, like a get-out-of-jail-free card, while the weapons in Mothership Zeta are designed to be used more generally in a gameplay sense, being significantly less powerful in comparison. While this might just sound like gameplay balancing, there can be a technical explanation for this as well. I believe the reason for this difference is that the two gas canisters that the game calls power cells and power modules, while visually similar, actually contain two different gases. The power cells utilize a gas that when turned into plasma has a unique set of particles that produce an extremely powerful plasma bolt, but this gas is rarer or more expensive, which results in power cells themselves being rare, while power modules use a cheaper and more common gas that gets the job done but isn't as powerful relatively speaking, resulting in a more widespread form of ammunition. That's likely why the atomizer has that dual barrel configuration like the AF-2011A1. They're trying to increase the ballistic potential of a gun without changing its ammo. With that said, on to the next weapon. Up next in the Zetan arsenal is the Alien Disintegrator, everyone's favorite space blunderbuss. This gun is likely the backbone of the Zetan military, used by both soldiers on the ground and the crew aboard motherships. Capable of firing 100 times before requiring a reload, this gun is perfect for sustained firefights, and reloads quickly too with the simple press of a button above the rifle's quote-unquote receiver. But how does it work? We don't visually ever load any modules into the gun. My primary speculation is that the disintegrator functions on a pre-loading system. Modules are preloaded into the gun one by one, much like shotgun shells in a pump-action shotgun, and pressing the button on top of the gun cycles out the empty cartridge for a fresh one, keeping empty cartridges within the gun itself rather than injecting them. This not only allows for lightning-fast reloads, but ensures that the user can carry a lot of ammo, allowing them to stay in the fight for an extremely long time. Its ammo philosophy is similar to the Overwatch standard issue pulse rifle from Half-Life 2. Which utilizes a chain-feeding mechanism somewhat reminiscent of a traditional machine gun to automatically load new energy cells when the current one runs out. Unlike the pulse rifle though, I believe based on the body design of the disintegrator that it uses a revolving cylindrical chamber, likely located somewhere underneath these glowy lights here, to hold the gas cartridges much like real-life revolvers. I can assume they're loaded through this access port on the left side of the rifle somehow, as the Fallout 76 version shows the player character loading a cartridge in its reload animation, though that version gets rid of the button reload entirely. Since Fallout 76 takes place before any of the other Fallout games in the timeline, I believe that the 76 disintegrator is an early model that has not adopted an internal feeding mechanism seen in the Fallout 3 version, and that's why the gas cartridges need to be reloaded manually. Since Fallout 3 has no animation of the load water or preloading the gun, it's hard to say. As for the projectile, it's less of a blaster bolt and more of a blaster blob. I believe the reason for this is similar to the atomizer's dual barrels. It's likely the disintegrator uses a less stable electromagnetic field to contain its projectile in an attempt to make the projectile bigger and affect more surface area on a potential target. A variation of getting more bang for your buck out of a certain kind of ammo, since the disintegrator also uses power modules instead of cells. Finally, we reach the star of the show, and easily the most iconic Zetan weapon, making an appearance in almost every Fallout game to date, the Alien Blaster. Keeping with the rest of the weapons, we'll focus on the Fallout 3 rendition. Despite its size relative to other Alien weapons, it's incredibly powerful, featuring a maximum possible damage of 130 points per shot, which doesn't even account that every shot is a guaranteed critical hit. It easily outclasses every other Zetan weapon available to the player. It also comes in 3 variants, the stock version, the Fire Lance, and the Captain's Sidearm. This pistol is incredibly rare and uses ammunition that's extremely hard to come by, the Alien Power Cell. As I theorized earlier, the power cells use a more expensive but much more powerful gas to turn into a plasma projectile, giving the weapon a massively increased power output compared to the much more common weapons within the Zetan military. Considering how rare the gun itself is as well as its ammo, it took me a while to speculate its true role in the Alien arsenal. This gun, despite its power and advantages, is not standard issue likely because of the cost of ammunition or cost to manufacture the gun. Instead, it's a badge of office, a rare reward for pilots, captains, or commanding officers of the Zetan military who perform exemplary service in the line of duty. It's likely constructed on commission for each recipient. These guns are not only incredibly powerful, but easily customizable to fit the needs of the user. The basic blaster variant is a stock, unmodified version, likely just awarded to the pilot of Recon Craft Theta, who unfortunately crash-landed not soon after receiving this gun, so obviously its owner didn't have time to modify it to his or her liking. It features visible oxidization of whatever alloy is used in its manufacture, caused by exposure to the elements post-crash. How long this gun was sitting next to the corpse of its previous owner we can't say for certain, but thankfully it still works for us to use. On the other hand, the Fire Lance is a modified version that has been customized by the pilot of the unnamed recon craft that explodes above our head in the random encounter where we received this weapon. This pilot was either particularly sadistic or simply a pyromaniac, as the power output has been tweaked on this particular pistol to not deal as much raw damage, but just enough that the bodies of his victims spontaneously combusted into flames when subjected to this weapon. The wear and tear on the Fire Lance is likely less from exposure to the raw elements, but rather from many years of service to its user. Finally, the Captain's Sidearm. Personal pistol of the captain of Mothership Zeta has been heavily modified. Within its pristine, shiny outer casing lies several personal modifications made likely by the captain himself, or at least a trustworthy weapons expert. Rather than a single high-damage bolt, it fires 6 smaller and weaker bolts in a shotgun-like spread and uses power modules rather than power cells. These modifications were likely made to fit the captain's needs for self-defense aboard his own vessel. The shotgun-like nature of this weapon compared to its stock variant was likely added to better prioritize close-quarters combat, which is a rather common occurrence aboard a mothership with many enclosed spaces, and the use of power modules so that the captain would have a better supply of ammo in the event of an engagement, trading raw damage for long-term usability in the event he needed to defend himself. In the end, these rare pistols are likely an elusive but appreciated sight in Zetan culture, signifying the wielder is someone of importance or of great valor. On a technical level, they don't function much differently than other Zetan blasters, but lacking the unique design elements to get more damage from a weaker gas. Well, because it obviously doesn't use that gas, it uses the more powerful gas, so such design quirks aren't necessary. The gun overall resembles a traditional firearm more so than any other blaster featured here, but has a few interesting tidbits I'd like to theorize about. Most notable is this large cresting piece above the main housing, which, while resembling something of an extremely embellished iron sight, is likely more or less a rangefinder, judging by the small blue tip facing downrange. I theorize this rangefinder eliminates the need for a traditional iron sight when used with a Zetan spacesuit by sending real-time ballistics telemetry data to the heads-up display within the suit's visor. There are small-like antenna devices on alien disintegrators that I also believe serve the same function. The alien atomizer doesn't feature this device because it's likely designed to be used by crew members of the ship who aren't always going to be in a spacesuit when the need for self-defense arises. The little metal bit on the end of the barrel of the alien blaster that actually resembles an iron sight is an electromagnetically charged stabilizer to further stabilize and shape the bolt into its traditional Star Wars style shape, similar to the electromagnetic stabilizer claws of the Winchester P94 mentioned earlier, as it sits too low below the housing to be seen by the operator even with the rangefinder removed. The blaster also features what looks like a dial, likely a firing mode or power selector, and a small metal tab that from the looks of it is designed to slide back, likely a release mechanism for the gas cartridge. One neat detail the developers added was that spent power cells appear drained in the reloading animation with no blue glow, while the fresh one is glowing bright cyan, which further supports my theory of these cells being gas cartridges, as if that wasn't proven enough already. This effect is most easily seen in dark areas, and for some reason, the alien atomizer does not have the same detail. Unfortunately, this video isn't complete without a few outlier weapons, so let's dive right into those weapons as well. Starting off with the Alien Blaster from Fallout 1 and 2. This odd weapon features a vastly different design to any Zetan weapon we know of. Instead of using gas cartridges like other ranged weapons, it utilizes small energy cells, likely meaning it's not plasma-based at all. The Fallout Wiki theorizes that this blaster was a prototype to allow for the easy replenishing of ammunition on Earth, and so was designed to use human-designed energy cells. I believe this to be inaccurate, as not only is its design so vastly different from other alien weapons, but the skeletons of the aliens we find at the crash site hardly resemble Zetans at all. Their skulls are much bigger, and their bodies are a lot shorter, though it's hard to tell. Its stats are also hinting at the weapon not being of Zetan origin, as it has the shortest range of any single-shot ranged weapon in Fallout 1, with a maximum range of 10 hexes. Visually, it also seems to shoot a bolt of what looks like lightning rather than contain a plasma bolt, and yes, I know that lightning is in itself plasma, but represented here, it's in a very different form compared to other weapons featured here. With this in mind, I believe the Alien Blaster in 1 and 2 is in fact not a Zetan weapon. Instead, it is a sort of Tesla pistol designed by a different alien race entirely. It simply draws from any battery that can be hotwired to it, and its short range suggests that it doesn't contain a projectile in the EM field, but rather shoots a bolt of lightning from one contact point to the next. I believe this, in the original rulebook at least, for Fallout 1 states that 1 hex is about 1 yard of distance. So in order for electricity to travel through the air 10 yards, or the weapon's maximum range, it would take about 27 million volts. And since it's capable of instantly frying almost any enemy in the game, I'd estimate the actual current of the bolt this alien weapon shoots is easily well over 1,000 to 4,500 amps, likely in the 30,000 to 200,000 range, similar to Earth lightning bolts. That's one hell of a shock. Technically, this weapon isn't a blaster at all, but quite literally a zapper. Next, we have the Alien Blaster Pistol from Fallout 4 and Fallout 76. This one is a bit of a stumper at first, but its function both in its role and technically is relatively simple until you get into the modding of it to use fusion cells, which I'll get into in just a moment. The Alien Blaster Pistol in Fallout 4 and 76 is significantly weaker than its Fallout 3 counterpart. It definitely shoots faster, and is still a force to be reckoned with, but it's not that much of a powerhouse compared to the beast that is Fallout 3's blaster. I theorized that, considering this weapon both appears in 76 and 4, that this pistol is an older but longer running model of standard issue survival pistol issued to recon craft pilots for use if they crash in a dangerous location on an alien world. Similar to the TP-32, a real-life Soviet pistol issued to cosmonauts for use should they land back on Earth in an inhospitable location. It likely utilizes power modules rather than cells, considering its damage per shot. Fallout 4 and 76, by extension, refer to its ammo as blaster rounds simply because there isn't a more powerful variant to compare to like in 3, only the one kind of cartridge. This pistol is highly modifiable and simple to use, likely designed to be modified in the field to suit its user's needs. It's so simple, a human can easily fabricate and install mods for this weapon with the right know-how, and even tweak it to run off of fusion cells, which doesn't make much sense. Considering my speculations, that's like tweaking a regular plasma rifle to disregard its gas cartridge and instead run on 2 fusion cells. It simply wouldn't work. If it was instead modified to use human-made plasma cartridges, that would make a lot more sense. Maybe with the fusion mag, it needs the extra power from the 2 sources to ionize and contain the air directly in front of the barrel to propel it as a similar projectile, which would explain the significant decrease in per-shot damage when the fusion mag is installed. It's essentially using Earth air, an even less potent gas than the cheaper POW modules use. And the reason why a design for such a pistol hasn't changed in 185 years, though, between Fallout 76 and 4, is likely from a simple design philosophy of if it isn't broken, don't fix it. Since its purpose is a simple to use, easy to maintain, and highly adaptable survival pistol, this design is perfect for that, and with the Zetans being as efficient as I believe them to be, simply never changed the design as they saw that it never needed to be changed in the first place. Up next is the drone cannon. I'm including this in the outlier section as well as a weapon we can use. It isn't designed to be used as a handheld weapon. It's used by the player as improvisational. Its intended purpose is a mounted weapon for the Guardian model of alien drone. When mounted on the drone, it fires a large ball of plasma that explodes upon impact. Then in the hands of the player, its projectile bounces a bit before exploding, almost like the Demo Man's grenade launcher in Team Fortress 2. My best theory for why this happens is that the Guardian drones have onboard electromagnetic regulators that regulate how stable the projectile is, and when removed, the cannon defaults into a safe mode that stabilizes the projectile as much as possible, causing its electromagnetic field to react to the environment and bounce off surfaces before eventually destabilizing and exploding. The projectile is also affected by gravity, which I'm assuming is also a result of this hyper-stabilization. The EM field keeping this plasma stable has enough energy and momentum to have its own gravitational pull and is therefore pulled in turn by either the artificial gravity on the ship or Earth's gravitational force. Though this dives into the theory of relativity, which I could use a brushing up on, and everything I just said about the gravity thing could be complete bullshit. Considering this weapon is explosive, I'm not sure exactly why the Zetans thought it appropriate to mount this to what I assume is a security robot, since it would invalidate the purpose of protecting crew members since the potential for collateral friendly fire is high. My best guess is that the Guardian drones, like the parcels and modules, are named that as an assumption from the human we play as these drones are military models rather than security ones and are simply repurposed for the role on the fly, concerning the ship-wide breach of security that was us escaping and freeing several more human prisoners. Since their cannon is affected by gravity, it would make sense that these drones serve as artillery support in both offensive and defensive situations. It's likely that the Zetans are manufacturing them aboard the mothership specifically to use them should they ever invade Earth directly through force, though it's possible that every mothership comes outfitted with a robotics wing by default. It also is possible that these drones are supposed to replace ground troopers entirely in order to minimize Zetan casualties. Its variant, Drone Cannon EXB, is a prototype being developed in the weapons lab aboard Mothership Zeta. It has a greater range than the stock variant, and its projectiles always explode no matter who wields it, be that drone or human. My theory is that the EXB is an attempt to increase the default range of the drone's cannon, but hit roadblocks in keeping the electromagnetic field as stable as previous iterations, resulting in the projectile always exploding on impact. Second to last is the Death Ray, also in the Outliers list considering it's a mounted weapon. We destroy the Death Ray's power generators as part of the questline and later use it to destroy the support mothership that comes to Zeta's aid, likely because the captain rerouted power to render the ray operational again. Speaking of which, the Death Ray requires at least 4 of the massive fusion generators that can be found in other places around the ship. I assume they are fusion, or something stronger like cold fusion, though cold fusion wouldn't require the coolant these generators require to clearly remain functional. Enough about the generators though, that can be for a sequel video. I believe these death rays are not plasma weapons, but rather are particle beams, which we would see on a much smaller scale in Bethesda's latest game, Starfield. These massive particle cannons fire a high-speed stream of atomic or subatomic particles that deal damage by depositing their energy into a target, causing thermal, kinetic, and even ionizing damage. These weapons would be perfect for spaceship-to-spaceship combat, as particle beams are easy to direct in a vacuum compared to plasma. Particle beams are different from a regular laser, as a laser is light energy and only really deals surface damage, while particle beams are directed atomic particles that can penetrate deeper into targets and deal substantial damage. The cannons the Zetans have devised are extremely powerful and on par with a nuclear payload, or even exceeding one, easily demonstrated by our ability to configure the one we disable to wipe out Algonquin Provincial Park in Ontario, Canada, as well as likely Detroit and most of the northeastern United States. Their purpose, other than ship combat, is likely a last resort in an invasion of a planet to wipe out the population. I say last resort because if I was invading a planet of pre-FTLs in an effort to capture it and colonize it instead, I'd want the planet mostly intact. Can you tell I play Stellaris? Last and most certainly least is the humble alien turret. I wasn't going to include this one, but I figured someone was going to bring it up if I didn't, so I'll keep this one quick. Its general purpose is to keep areas of the mothership secure, as anyone could have likely guessed. It fires the same kind of plasma projectile as the disintegrator, with it essentially being a mounted version of that rifle controlled by a computer. It also has a large blue sensor underneath its barrel, which looks similar to the thing I call the rangefinder on the alien blaster, further supporting that theory. Thanks to what appears to be a larger casing compared to the original rifle, it can likely hold a lot more gas cartridges, but would still require occasional maintenance to ensure its continued operation. That's all I can really say about the turret that hasn't already been said. Before I wrap this video up, I'd like to take a brief moment to address the biggest hole in my speculation. You may be asking, Bones McGee, if human plasma guns and Zetan blasters are essentially the same on a functional basis, with the only difference between them being different gas and highly advanced technology, why do plasma weapons turn targets into green goo and Zetan weapons turn targets to blue ash? That's a great question, with the simple answer being that it was a design choice. It's likely Bethesda wanted to carry over that disintegration effect from the first 2 games' iterations of these weapons, and that's why they disintegrate targets rather than gooifying them. Personally, I believe these weapons would neither disintegrate or gooify, but rather something even more gruesome. Theoretically, should a projectile of super hot ionized gas make contact with your skin, instead of turning you to ash like being burned to death would, or turning you into comically green goop, it would instead likely flash boil the water in your tissues that make up your body, causing them to rapidly and violently burst. The end result is your body would, or at least the affected area, would literally explode into red gory mist. or at least leave you with severe third-degree burns. Long story short, it would turn the bloody mess perk from fiction into reality. Both plasma weapons and Zetan blasters wouldn't completely disintegrate or groupify victims in real life, and that effect is mostly just flashy sci-fi nonsense. And that wraps up this video. I hope you enjoyed listening to me ramble on about Fallout's silly alien weapons. As I said at the start, I really enjoy Fallout, and I'd love to make more content about it, and not just in the speculative category. If you'd like me to make more Fallout content, then please like the video and subscribe, and comment down below what you'd like me to talk about next. I'll see you folks in the next video.